this chapter was pretty good. I mean, Gaolang and Jurota are going at it. This chapter was dedicated to the fight completely. There was no side content for the most part. And so I'm very happy because this, in my opinion, I think that this is probably going to be one of the best fights we're going to get in this tournament. Besides, like, let's say Gaolang and Ramon, the fight between them, which I'm looking forward to the most, mainly because of Ramon and the Slaughter Coliseum. But let's completely focus on this chapter, which is titled Mortal Enemies, which picks up where we left off in the last chapter, where Gaolang basically had hit Jurota with a pretty heavy right. And while of course Jurota is reeling from that attack, he actually goes for a sort of grab or trying to touch Gaolang more specifically, because technically speaking, that's all he needs to do. And of course Gaolang, he dodges the grab or the potential throw, and we see him basically dodge towards the right of Jurota and land 2 hits, one on the lower half of his rib cage, the other I think is going towards his gut, which are pretty heavy blows. Like, this is enough to send people reeling. But of course Jurota tries to basically grab or basically touch Gaolang. However, Gaolang dodges it again. It seems as though, especially with the stance Gaolang is taking here, this is clearly a far more boxing style that he's using to engage Jurota right now. And we hear, of course, Jerry, since he is the commentator here, saying that Jurota isn't even flinching from the attacks that Gaolang is basically managing to hit him with, and that he is seemingly just standing up and taking it like it's of course all right, and he seems pretty composed. But we can kind of see that of course Jurota is taking damage, but it is also impressive how much endurance and focus he has, where he's basically ignoring the pain of Gaolang's strikes. And we get this confirmed by, of course, Yamashita, who's saying yes, he is sustaining damage, but it's just his concentration. Because his concentration is so high, it's sort of offsetting the reality of the pain his body is probably going through. And the main reason he's concentrated is because he's looking for openings from Gaolang, because basically all Jurota has to do is touch Gaolang and he's on the road to winning. And so Gaolang needs to be pretty careful here. We then cut over to Katahara and Jerry, with Katahara actually asking Jerry, hey, it seems as though Gaolang is fighting a bit more passively here. And of course Jerry is basically saying, hey look, you can't blame Gaolang for taking this approach, because of course Arashiyama is a grappler. The worst thing you can do against him is actually get touched by him, especially Jurota, who's like a master at this and has the swing technique. However, Jerry then also goes on to say that Gaolang is also a striker, and so there's a very interesting dynamic going on here, because there are basically polar opposites in terms of the field of martial arts they're actually specialized in, which means that when it comes to striking for Jurota, let's say, he is going to be clearly expertly actually outmatched in that field by Gaolang. It would be stupid for him to try that. However, it would also be stupid likewise for Gaolang to try to basically engage with Jurota closely if the likelihood of Jurota touching him is likely, because Jurota will actually manage to swing him. They don't actually have that much defense against each other's specialties because of this, and so it is this very weird but also pretty fun matchup scenario where these fighters are sort of waiting for the other fighter to get inside their own little, let's say, pool or ring so that they can actually win, or at least just resort to trying to poke at each other. We then of course cut back to Yamashita, who basically of course emphasizes the point that I've gone through and says that they're basically mortal enemies, which is where the chapter title actually comes from. But of course, Yamashita does note something important, and this is something I actually said in the last chapter review. Yeah, Gaolang has gotten a lot of hits in, but Jurota really just needs a few swings. 1, 2, maybe even 3, and this match is finished. That's the reality of the situation for Gaolang. Gaolang, on the other hand, has to basically either A, try to wither Jurota down, but even if he manages to do that, he has to be able to get the knockout attack basically, because otherwise he will constantly always be in danger, and so he's pretty cautious at this. Then of course we actually proceed on to the fight, and yeah, Gaolang is attacking this time again going forward. We then proceed on to Jurota's thoughts, where Jurota basically says that Gaolang can't beat him without boxing, basically the type of boxing he's currently doing right now, where you're trying to basically, at least if I understand it properly, you're trying to keep your opponent away from you and basically just poke at them without actually going into close quarters combat. It's typically safer for the people that employ this tactic in boxing. But Jurota said Gaolang cannot win like this, he needs the knockout blow that I've actually talked about. Specifically the God Glow is what Jurota is probably a lot more cautious of, because that is the one attack that can probably take him out basically 85, maybe 90% of the time, and so he has to be able to see it coming, and it seems like that is what Jurota is more cautious of, and that is how he sees the fight actually going. If he can't see the God Glow coming, he's finished basically, and so Arashiyama needs to predict the God Glow coming to win the fight. At least this is what's going through his own head, and he needs patience to actually do this. Of course, Gaolang is attacking him while he's actually trying to cook up this plan or this strategy, and he is just striking at Jurota relentlessly, but Jurota isn't moving. He practices what he preaches. This man is being patient. He is guarding himself, but not so much that he can't see the God Glow coming. He wants to keep tabs on Gaolang. And of course we cut over to Gaolang, who basically is affirming Jurota's choice here. He's basically saying, yeah, Jurota is actually doing the right thing in this case, because pre-initiative is useless against Gaolang. And the reason why it's useless, and this is something that I have talked about in the pre-initiative video before, Gaolang can strike faster than your brain can react basically. And because pre-initiative relies on your brain, you know, thinking of the inception of intent, or basically moving, or more specifically, let me just stick to Gaolang's own words, before the brain can actually detect the inception of intent, it's already too late for the user. And so this is something that is basically a foresight killer. And yeah, this is something that I did sort of talk about. It seems as though Gaolang was somewhat right. Striking fast enough does actually result in you bypassing pre-initiative, but I will say it's probably far more because of the brain chemistry shenanigans going on, and I think it's far more of a reaction speed thing than anything else. But of course, Gaolang, he's the expert here, so we'll probably just stick with the foresight killer Gaolang's shenanigans there. And of course the fight carries on with Gaolang landing another heavy right. We then of course cut to this is a hard panel of basically, of course, Jurota getting hit towards the left side of his face. And you can kind of see the impact of Gaolang's fist still there, and he is still looking for an opening from Gaolang. It's like, it is insane the amount of dedication Jurota has to this strategy. Of course, Gaolang, he's going in up close, he thinks he has it, and Gaolang gets touched by Jurota. And just like that, my man gets swung. He basically gets slammed into the ground, but manages to cushion his blow with his arms. But again, that one swing managed to basically reset the entire match. That's how powerful Jurota's swings are, that with one of them, all the blows that Gaolang was doing, trying to wither Jurota down and all this stuff, all of that got reset with just one swing. Imagine what another swing that Gaolang wasn't necessarily prepared for or didn't cushion his blow for would have done. But of course we then cut over to, we get of course Yamashita's thoughts where he's like, oh, so he might have actually been waiting for this moment for, of course, Gaolang to actually come close to Jurota in order to try to go for the swing, and that Jurota is basically is not trying to read Gaolang per se, but Gaolang's strategy or the flow of the fight, and basically try to predict how things will go. Naturally, of course, he's not using pre-initiative. It's basically ordinary foresight. It's normal prediction here, which does imply that Jurota does have foresight, by the way, or pre-initiative. But of course, we then cut over to Gaolang, and Gaolang, he basically says that this line is pretty interesting, man. I think this will probably be in my title for the video. It says, "Be honored. You're fortunate enough to face a warrior like me," which this devious smile by Gaolang as he switches to Muay Thai. So it seems like we'll be getting a bit more Muay Thai from Gaolang, and I think he's better at Muay Thai than boxing, so this will be very interesting to see. Jurota is still there. He's probably still sticking to the plan. He's like, hey, big girl, my new stand ability, what a beautiful world we see here. And that ends the chapter. My thoughts so far, this was a very good chapter. Again, the focus on this fight solely has benefited this chapter a lot. The art was on point. I know some people like to complain about the art in the Kengan fandom, but the art here was on point, especially that Jurota panel where he gets hit. Oh man, that was intense. But it seems like we have the framework for this fight, and maybe I might talk about it in a different video, although I probably won't. And that being that this really does depend on whether or not Jurota, and again, this is all on Jurota. If Jurota can predict the flow of the match and basically anticipate the God Glow, he will probably win. The chances are like 90%. If he can't do that, he'll lose. Because Jurota has sort of, unless like there's another ultimate move he doesn't know about, the God Glow is the one attack that Jurota is most cautious of, and it might be probably the one attack that will determine Gaolang's victory or defeat. But yeah, that's the video, that's the breakdown, that's the review. Those are my thoughts as well. Don't forget to like and sub, and until next time, take it easy.